Okay, this is a continuation of the last piece. I think one of the most significant ways, and this has already been well documented, that Black people have contributed to the construction of the noosphere is through music. Um, Black music, as especially Black music in the African diaspora, co-evolved and it co-erodes with um, with the electronic environment. It co-erodes with electronic communication. It co-erodes with the telegraph. It co-erodes with electrical wires. It co-erodes with the telephone. It co-erodes with stereo. And it co-erodes with radio. And it was one of the first, and it co-erodes with tape recording or audio recording. And it was one of the first forms of music that was played for a mass audience. And there was a lot of commentary at the time by a lot of white sociologists and moralists that like jazz was immoral because it would cause like mass hysteria. It would cause like large populations of white people to go into, basically we're all starting to get down, and they started to let go of a lot of the Victorian age body uh, repression and oppression that they had inflicted upon themselves and actually inflicted upon us and many other peoples. So, and if we really look at it, a friend of mine put it like this to me years ago. If we really look at what is music doing, okay, music is a form. First of all, music is a form of feedback, especially when you are playing the music yourself. You make a sound, and then that sound affects you, affects the body, it affects the heart rate, it affects the brain waves, it affects your feeling, you know. And then as you continue to make sounds, those sounds continue to feed back into you and change how you feel. And then you continue to make the sounds that help propel that feeling. So I believe that as a positive feedback loop. The more signal you send, the stronger the signal. The more signal you send out, the stronger the internal changes get and they build. So you can do that as a single individual with music. Now, if you play music and people are dancing or people are singing, right, the music can stimulate them and take them through changes and accelerate or quicken their energy and their movement. And then music can synchronize the movement of several people. And then the movement is synchronized with the musician. I was going to say the magician. You know, the music is synchronized with the musician, and then the musician continues to respond to the dancers, and then the dancers send back a signal to the musician. Now, that's in a way that's how all communication works: language, uh, you know, clothing. But music is a very quick feedback signal, and it is a very total feedback signal. I think it may not affect the visual field as much. It does when you have people who are dancing, but it definitely affects the whole internal system. It affects the internal rhythm of all the biological processes and the emotional processes and psychic processes that some people think arise from it. I'm not saying that I necessarily think that, but it's a good starting base if we want to be scientific about it. So then when you play music for a mass audience, potentially what you're doing is when everybody's feeling it, everybody is being entrained, right? And entrainment is when you take two systems that are moving randomly, and then those two systems start to interact with each other and move rhythmically. Even is I can't even do random with my hands because I'm actually an integrated system. So potentially what you have is you have systems that are moving rhythmically in alignment with one another, or they're in a resonance. So that's part of what music can do to a mass audience. So music used to be local. And by local, I mean this. You create a sonic field, okay? Maybe it's drums, maybe it's banjo, maybe it's guitar, maybe it's the human voice. And you create a sonic field, and everybody within the range of that field can potentially be trained. So let's say that field goes out a mile, okay? And after a mile, you can't hear that field, all right? Now, what electronic music does is electronic, and just the electronic environment can send a signal that is local. So a signal that could take place in a room, it sends it across a wide space, and then that same signal can take place in another room. And we see that right now. See, this is important, I think, right now in this COVID moment, because all of us, all of our social relationships have become even more reliant on this thing, on a computer, and on electronic signal transmission. Okay, so a DJ can be in their room spinning, and everybody who's in the room can be feeling with the DJ spinning, and then in 500 rooms across the country or 500 rooms across the planet, everybody could be feeling the same frequency that the DJ's spinning. Okay, and so so if everybody in that room is vibing and we're all going up and down more or less in the same time, okay, everybody in that room is potentially entrained. Maybe everybody's heart rate is starting to move at the same or whatever, right? And that's 500 people whose heart rate is moving at the same beat. That's 500 people, or yeah, okay, let's say it's 500 people in the room whose brainwaves are all starting to go into the alpha frequency. And if you got 500 other rooms across the world where everybody is listening to that music at the same time, that means that everybody else's brain waves or heartbeats and body movements are all potentially synchronized. So what music does is music creates not just music, but music plus the electronic environment can basically take a signal that used to be local and used to be, it could only travel as far as the sound wave could travel. And now it can travel, that same signal can blossom in 500, 5,000, 5 million other parts of the globe at the same time or at different times. So, Desjardins is talking about the noosphere as humanity becoming a collective conscious organism, or an organism that is aware of its own feedback signal all the way. Okay, so I think a critical piece of that is people actually being entrained with one another. And this dispersed music, that Black music was one of the initiators for, um, I think that's been one of our major contributions to the construction of the noosphere, is we've been able to create vibes all over the earth. And then we've been able to do it for generations, right? Because we had blues recordings that traveled out, we had jazz that traveled out, and some people say jazz was the first mass music, the first electronic mass music. We have rock and roll. And I mean, the frequencies of rock and roll, let's just flat out say it, changed the way that people live on planet Earth. The frequencies of rock and roll changed the way that people live on planet Earth. And just like jazz, people all over the world started to play rock and roll. No matter what their race or their ethnicity or their social standing. Although I think a lot of people in the lower and middle classes were the ones that grabbed onto it the most, especially in the beginning. And then the Beatles took it and then they made it high art and high concept. And then you have funk music. And again, like I listened to this band Krungbin, and they're a three-piece from Texas. They got a black drummer, a white lead singer, and maybe a Chicana bassist, and not a lead singer, guitarist, white guitarist, okay? And they're imitating Thai music, Thai funk music from the 70s. And Thai funk music picked up black funk music from the 70s, and they started to play it and interpret it in their place. And now that music that was left in records in the 70s is influencing these guys right now. And the same is with hip hop. You see, there's Palestinian hip hop groups. You know, there's hip hop in Uganda. Like, it's the same, it's like all over the world, right? And every generation and wave of black music has that same potency where it transforms, it informs and transforms the way that people interact socially all over the globe. So it's a signal. And this is what this friend of mine told me. She's like, basically, as a DJ, what you are doing is you're basically sending out like body ripple movement patterns across the planet. So if everybody's doing a certain dance to a certain kind of music, it's like this is a signal that is being sent across bodies all throughout the globe, and it's coordinating bodies across the globe. You know, now think about what are the great coordinators of bodies across the globe? Well, the greatest coordinator is the planet itself and the sun, right? The sun comes up and bodies all over the planet go. They get up, they stretch, and they get moving. So every time the earth rotates towards the light, bodies stand up and they get moving. And every time the earth rotates towards the night, bodies calm down. Although the nightlife, actually, bodies don't necessarily calm down. They change their rhythm. And sometimes the rhythm becomes more frantic in the nightlife. So you got the sun and the moon that's already conditioning us. And you know, one of the key aspects of ritual is rhythm. It is um, it is reoccurrence, right? Even if we think about meditation, the meditation practices over and over. It's reoccurrence and it's practice done over and over that eventually trains and entrains your body, entrains your brain frequencies, entrains your heart, and enables you to kind of become a biofeedback master of your own system. All right. So ritual entrains us as groups collectively. And if we go back to this idea of intuition and symbols, ritual entrains us to our intuition. And it can entrain us collectively to intuition or to the soul field. And why is this relevant? I mean, aside from the fact that it's fun to entrain with other people, and in physics, when two fields entrain or when they come into resonance, their energy is amplified. It's stronger. So we have two sounds. Those two fields together, it's going to be louder than just one of them. And I think this is also an important and interesting phenomenon in terms of what's happening now on the globe, right? Because on the planet, let me not say the globe, because the globe is a map that is used to uh, extract resources. But in some ways, that's what the globe has been. The planet is the multi-level entity that we are standing on and are made out of and are interacting with. And we have this problem on the planet right now. I mean, COVID is teaching us something, first of all. COVID is entraining us collectively. All of us are staying indoors. We have given the signal to each other to stay indoors and to stay away from each other. And it's pressing us to use this thing more. We can't locally communicate with one another. We have to communicate with one another through the distributed signal of electronics and the asynchronous symbol of electronics, and potentially the total system synchronous system of electronics. If that makes sense. And it's also showing us that all of our our individual organisms, there's these viruses that just run through all of our individual organisms. And we can spread virus signal from one person to the next very rapidly. And we're trying to disrupt that signal. And at the same time, that signal is showing us how we are interconnected as a system. And it shows us our ability to move and stop at the same time or at the right time in response to certain issues or threats or problems. And so we have all these kind of problems that we've identified on the planet for a long time. We got hundreds of thousands, we got millions of children starving every day all over the earth. Black children, brown children, white children even. People starving all over the earth. You know, we got this electronic environment and we got our consumption habits, especially in the wealthier nations, in the capitalist nations, that are so extreme that they are destroying the planetary ecology. They're destroying the life support systems that developed over millions of years. So, do we have the ability to move and stop with that? I think it shows us that we do. Do we have the collective coordination and the collective entrainment to respond to a signal that says stop? Don't eat that right now. Don't produce that right now. Don't drive right now. And a lot of people think that we have to create some giant artificial intelligence to rule over us, basically, because we're not capable of collectively self-regulating. And so I really wonder about music and about Black music as an instrument of collective self-regulation. And you think about the instructions, just to go back to like Black people, and not just Black people, because our music signals transmit across the planet. Think about the signals that comes through a lot of our music, especially as it is wedded to capitalism of the music industry. A lot of it tells us to kill ourselves. You know, a lot of it tells us to hoe ourselves and to pimp ourselves. And that reprogramming, it's you can see its effect on the kids. And it's been going on for a couple generations now. And we're spreading it to people all over the earth. You know, white people are imitating it in this country and beyond. You know, Latinos are imitating it in this country and beyond and contributing to it. Because that's the other thing, is that it's actually, we might be the originators of the signal, but the signal comes back to us, and it comes back to us from these other peoples. And it's an interesting reflection to see it come back. What are we actually transmitting? And are we actually aware of the power that we have as a people and as a signal transmitter and as a builder of intuitive bridge? Because this is the other thing about Black music that has been going on concurrently. Of course, a lot of it is party music. A lot of it is see that sun goes down at night and then that rhythm gets frantic and bodies want to be next to each other. But it's also in that it is the continuance of a lot of our spiritual traditions where we work with rhythm and movement of body and synchronized movement as a way to connect to and then symbols as a way to connect to our intuition. And so through the blues, through jazz very potently, through rock and roll definitely, and through hip hop self-consciously, we are working with symbol systems and connections to higher mind, higher intelligence, intuition, soul, call it what you want, spirit, God, Ka, call it what you want. So one of the things that Black music has done is done a lot of things. Is connected us to our intuition. And it's been a vehicle for our intuition. Not only do we connect up to it, but then we pour down from it into this world. And we use to shine a spotlight or black light on things that are normally invisible. And when the black light passes over it, there's certain phenomena that show up that were previously, that people wanted to hide and keep in the realm of invisibility, i.e. injustices. i.e. collective sicknesses, i.e. historical traumas, i.e. energizing people to act collectively, to be synchronized collectively and act towards liberation. So it's a powerful signal that we've been emitting, and it's a powerful contribution to the noosphere, and it has really helped create, because, the electronic technology has helped create a space where we are transacting as a planet. And globalization, the main focus is on the exchange of goods and on the exchange of resources, and on, more often not, the uneven exchange of goods and resources and this circulation of currency. But through Black music and through popular music in general, which really Black music is the carrier frequency for popular music all over the earth, we've helped create a global culture. We've helped create, this is what the Rastafarian movement was talking about. We've helped create one heart. We've helped create one love. We've helped wake people up to one love. We've helped make one love a transactional reality and a power that is moving around the world. And it's not that we created it and that it only exists through electronics. It's actually been moving above us, guiding us this whole time. But now we are downloading from it and then transmitting horizontally into the world from it. And now we have this, through our movements and through sound and through the electronic, telecommunication system of the noosphere, we have an on the ground reflection of what's happening in the sky above us. And then once the earth is resonating with what the heaven of the one love is doing, then, like I said before, with the resonance signals, both signals actually get amplified. And this stuff is really needed at this time because we have to make a jump as a species. We have to make a jump in our collective coordination and in our collective concern. We have to treat humanity and the earth as one body. So if there's pain over here, this is partly how injustice works. There's pain right here. But when we try to keep something invisible, it's as if we are cutting off our hand. We are trying to ignore the pain signal in our hand. And actually, we're bleeding out of that finger and the whole body is bleeding. It's the whole body. It's not just that finger is bleeding. Right? So if we pollute, if the total industrial system pollutes heavy in Black neighborhoods, that is Black people being poisoned first and worst, but it's also the entire system still poisoning itself. That's how the pollution is getting out into the larger ecosphere. It's through us. And if our voice doesn't get heard and fed back into the entire system, then the entire system can keep being unconscious in that way. And so that's part of the challenge right now, is that we have to attain species consciousness and species coordination of movement, species entrainment. And that entrainment can't just be in and of itself. It has to be entrained with that rotation of the earth, that day and night. It has to be entrained depending on how far you want to go with the stars. It's got to be entrained with the flow of rivers and the movement of clouds and with animal life. And that's been the function of music and symbol systems throughout time, and especially in our cultures. And that's why in our cultures, the emphasis is on rhythm is so potent, because rhythm is that coordination. It is that interplay. It is that polyrhythmic nature of a cosmos that we dance within and that we are singers and contributors to. So we used to do that in a localized way, and now we have to do it in a collective planetary way. And as Black people, in my view, there's a particular contribution, a frequency or symbol system or place, or we are a certain part of that body and we can bring attention to certain parts of that body and introduce abilities into that body. So anyway, that's what I got for, that's the second knowledge drop for now. Knowledge drop slash contemplation. What do you think? What do you think of this COVID moment? What do you think of noosphere? What do you think of Black Signal? What do you think of Afrofuturism? What do you think of collective coordination? What do you think of simple systems? What kind of signal should we be transmitting? What kind of signal do you want to transmit? What lives in your imagination? What's yearning in your heart to be communicated? What are the pains in your environment that need to be spotlighted and attended to? What's the hidden light in your Blackness?